What do all the top-ranking podcasts have in common? A cohesive brand and recognizable podcast messaging. Your show's cover art is the first impression that a potential listener sees and could be the difference in them hitting the play button or not. Today at PodStudio, we're breaking down the essential steps in putting together a podcast brand that stands out in a sea of content and my tips on creating eye-catching cover art. Let's go. First, we're going to dive in to understanding your podcast identity. You want to really define your mission and your vision, and this really starts with your podcast's core purpose. What do you want to achieve with your show? And really, it's only when you've done this for yourself and you truly understand the message that you want to share with your audience, your goals for the show at its core, then you can convey it to an audience. Who is your core demographic or your target audience? Who is that ideal listener? We talked about this in a previous video. I'll link it here, but understanding your audience helps really to shape your brand's voice and the style of your show. A certain demographic of listeners may perceive or consume your branding differently. So it's important to understand your audience and use marketing tactics that appeal to that segment of people. Boomers don't necessarily love flashy graphics and fast-paced videos. The text on the screen can't be too small. This is just one example of using marketing tactics and messaging that apply to your core demographic. We also need to establish a USP, a unique selling proposition. What is unique about your podcast? This will be your differentiator in a crowded market. Standing out in a potentially overcrowded niche will be absolutely necessary to establish yourself as a force in the industry and how to become a go-to resource within your niche. Next up, we have crafting your visual brand and creating your actual podcast assets. So creating a memorable logo and eye-catching and engaging cover art. Your logo is the face of your podcast, and I'm using logo and cover art interchangeably for the purpose of this video, but we want to make sure it's simple, memorable, and relevant to your show. You want to use a consistent color palette. You want to choose a consistent color palette. What the fuck am I saying there? Color plays a big role in branding. You want to pick one that reflects your own personality and your show's brand. Oh, it's a circus. Reset. All of our messaging and podcast assets should really be a reflection of yourself and your brand and what you're trying to convey to your audience. You know, certain colors catch the eye in different ways and mean different things almost subliminally. Green, money, or finance. Fast food restaurants tend to use primary colors, red, yellow, blue. It brings out hunger and, different emotions associated with food. So do your research on your color palette. The same goes for fonts. Your text style and fonts can really convey different emotions. You want to choose a typeface, again, that aligns with your brand and the tone of your voice. Nothing too formal if your show is entertaining and sort of silly. Just making sure that the font matches your message. Canva is an amazing resource for us DIY graphic designers, and I use Canva every day. They do have a free version that will get you just about everything that you need in very reasonably priced paid plans. Say that 10 times fast. I do have a Canva tutorial on creating engaging and eye-catching cover art. Go check that out at podcastneat.com under the podcast resources tab, and make sure you stay tuned to the end of this video for this week's challenge. In addition to developing your podcast visual branding, you also want to create an audio vibe or an audio format for your show. This includes your podcast theme music, your intros and outros, as well as the pacing and format of your show. Your theme music really sets the mood, so you want to find something that matches the vibe of your podcast. And trust me when I say you want to standardize your intros and outros. So save yourself some time by recording and editing your intro separately and just popping them into your show's final edit. Consistency in the intros and outros creates a familiar structure for your listener. Consider using a voiceover talent. You can find these on Fiverr, very affordably priced, or ask a friend who has that radio voice or a fellow podcaster, just to give it that extra level of professionalism. Speaking of formatting, the flow or format of your show really should speak to your niche or industry. So an interview style versus a solo cast, a panel of experts versus a narrative. A good example of this would be a panel discussion or an expert opinion. Goes great with perhaps a political or a breaking news style show. You want to have people who know what they're talking about and can highlight that specific area of expertise. So as we consider all of these different aspects of branding your podcast, always keep in mind the importance of maintaining consistent content and messaging. So when we're developing our content strategy, you want to plan your episodes with a consistent theme or message in mind. This will help build that brand cohesion that we're talking about. And over time, it will continue to add to the style that you develop. So with that said, you really want to create a style or branding guide. This can be documents with style guidelines, fonts, colors, and will help to maintain that consistency across all platforms. Also, if you begin to introduce members to your team or folks that will help with social media or branding, they have the guidelines and really understand the voice of your podcast. This can help you stay connected with your audience through social media and other platforms to really reinforce your brand. Again, consistency is key when considering brand recognition. And finally, this brings us to expanding your brand beyond the podcast. And I think one of the most important aspects of this is building a website or landing page for your podcast. It's a hub for your show. Your episodes live there, digital offerings, or really just a place to direct your listeners for all of your assets. Obviously, you want to include all of your branding elements like your logo, your color palette, your text within your website and your website's design, again, for that brand recognition. You can also utilize social media here by including links to your different platforms. And this will help to extend your brand's reach and, again, keeping your visuals consistent. A website is a great way to collaborate with other brands or podcasters, and this can help to expand your brand's visibility and extend that reach. Working with brands that align with your values and your messaging is the number one way for organic listener growth. Again, your first website doesn't need to be extravagant or break the bank with a web developer. It can simply be a Linktree page or a landing page. Shout out again to Canva, who can really help you develop a solid landing page and link it to a domain that you purchase. It's really important to have a space to build your online presence, and it will continue to evolve as your show and your brand grow. I hope this insight into developing a cohesive podcast brand has been helpful. Remember, building a brand is about consistency and alignment with your message. Starting with a clear identity will help all of the pieces fall into place as you grow. Always encourage your listeners to take action and engage with your episodes or your content, like I'm doing here. And if you have found this video helpful, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. We upload new resources for digital entrepreneurs every Friday. Now, go build that podcast brand. And don't think I forgot about this week's challenge. It is to create an engaging and creative thumbnail for an upcoming episode or for your dream episode that will grab your listeners' attention visually. Don't forget to tag me in those on Instagram at PodcastNate, and you just may find yourself in our next video. That's all for today, friends. I'm Nate Kelly, founder of PodStudio, and my goal is to help you unleash your voice and amplify your impact. I'll see you next Friday. Bye for now.